Welcome once again to the Power Bike Tour. This weekend finds us at Brands Hatch in Kent, and we look forward to seeing the latest rounds of the Aprilia RS 125 Super Team Championship, this superb starter series for young riders who wish to make a career out of bike racing. And then the newest kid on the block, it's the Triumph 675 Challenge. 2 championships in one, the Michelin Young Guns for those riders under 25 and the Challenge for those over 25-year-olds. But here at Brands Hatch on the full Grand Prix circuit, the grid approaches for the first of the 2 Aprilia Super Team races that we'll be seeing today. And here, pulling up onto the 4th spot on the front row, number 24, Johnny Blackshaw. Johnny, who picked up a maiden win at Lydden Hill last time out, but yesterday at Brands, well, he more than doubled that. He picked up the wins in both races, so he must be a favourite starting today. There alongside him on the 3rd spot, Danny Kent on 52, then Jack Blake on number 3 and on pole position. Number 4, championship leader coming into this weekend, James Folkard. That championship lead though being shrunk. And away they go for the first time of asking. James Folkard getting a lovely start there as they run up the rise into Paddock Hill Bend. Great shot, blind, 90-degree right-hand corner, completely blind the exit is as you get into that corner. Up the hill, under the bridge there, into the hairpin at Druids. And the field even bigger this weekend. We've got more young riders joining, including I think Tommy Phillips out there, Tommy Dale should be there, Scott Wilson, and Kingsley Ruddy is having his first adventure with the Super Teens. And there, as they run up the hill from Surtees down onto the long circuit, we see them at the fastest part of the course. This is the dip after the Johnny Herbert Bridge as they run up into the right-hander at Hawthorns, and that's where the timing beam is on the Grand Prix loop. And then we see young Josh Harland. He's still just 12 years old, one of the youngest competitors in the field, but he's no longer the youngest because he's been joined by another 12-year-old this weekend, and that is young Tommy Philp on number 36. In fact, he only had his 12th birthday just a few weeks ago. But the leader's back towards us, and Johnny Blackshaw, fresh from that double win yesterday, just nips down the inside at Clearways as they come under the Medical Centre Bridge off the Grand Prix loop. And he it is that heads the fields. They run down towards Paddock Hill Bend, but look at Danny Kent lining up there, can't quite do it, and James Folk very late on the brakes as they run into Paddock, but just can't squeeze his way by. But James gets a good exit from Paddock Hill Bend, and he's right on the case of Johnny Blackshaw as they get into the hairpin. Danny Kent there in 3rd place, and in 4th, and an absolute hero really this weekend, is young Jack Blake, a newcomer to the series just a few events ago, and he has taken this place by storm. He had an absolutely brilliant time in qualifying, and he is right there with the leaders, proving that his qualifying lap wasn't just a fluke. He's been getting better and better as each event passes, and look, there he is in 4th place, but James Folkard has nipped ahead of Johnny Blackshaw, and as they run up the hill from Surtees onto the Grand Prix loop this time, it is James Folkard that is back in the lead. There is a shot of Kingsley Ruddy there. Kingsley, I think he's from Barnsley, Kingsley, and he's a newcomer to the series, and what a place to start your career in bike racing. Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. Well, you might as well start at the top. And there the leaders peeling off down into Westfield, but meanwhile on the exit of the Indy circuit, that is the bike of Danny Hedger, another of the newcomers to the series. Danny's up and okay, and the marshals rescuing his machine just in time to see the leaders come back, and Johnny Blackshaw once again nabbing the lead ahead of James Folkard. Danny Kent there in 3rd with Jack Blake in 4th, and behind him, good to see, number 23, Sean Winfield. He's managed to get away from the pack and fighting hard to get in touch with the leaders. Why is that so good? Well, Sean started the year in great form, picking up wins at the Brands Hatch Indy circuit, but then he had that injury at Snetterton in testing. It meant that he missed a couple of rounds, but it is good to see him back on form. Meanwhile, look at this lot. It looks like turning out time down at Blockbusters, doesn't it? The entire pack led by Reese Rothwell. Oh, and somebody else has binned it down there. That looks like, is that Kingsley Ruddy? That's our newcomer from Barnsley. Well, he's hit the old learning curve at the bottom of Paddock Hill Bend. He walks away with the marshals to a place of safety, and he will be discussing, I'm sure, with them what exactly went wrong. And meanwhile, out at Hawthorns, this incredibly quick right-hander, Johnny Blackshaw, once more into the lead. Danny Kent there tucks in behind him. James Folkard momentarily displaced to third. And look at Jack Blake. He's right up there, running with the leaders. This is a superb performance, certainly his best of the season. And there, also one of his best rides of the season, he's improving with every event, is number 28. That's Ben Broadway. Ben running along the Derek Minter Straight. Derek, of course, one of the great names in bike racing from across the years. And these could be of the future. Johnny Blackshaw once more towards us to complete a lap. Danny Kent right underneath him. Then James Fogg. Goodness me, James very quick off clearways. And he was going to have a bit of a dip there, but there wasn't room past Danny Kent, so he has to settle back into third. But watch him into Paddock, and Jack Blake's going as well. Jack sticks it up the inside at Paddock. And, well, it's fantastic to see. Jack got the real confidence boost he needed with qualifying yesterday. Good racing as well. And he really is mixing it with these three guys. Remember, they're all now multiple race winners in this championship. And Jack Blake wants to get his face in there as well, and he is doing so. George Russell back in sixth place, just ahead of Reese Rothwell as they come out of Druids. But the leaders are down at Surtees, and it's Danny Kent who's in front once again, ahead of James Folkard. And Johnny Blackshaw, who was leading just a few corners ago, is down into third. There we see number 90, Luke Kinsley, chasing hard, but the leaders three abreast, fanning out towards Hawthorns. And once again, it's Johnny Blackshaw that hits the front ahead of James Folkard and Danny Kemp. Jack Blake tucked behind them in fourth place, down the Derek Minter Straight and into Westfields. And around the outside again goes James Folkard as we look back to see the midfield fight there. That pack going through. Ty Jones, number 98, in the middle of that lot. They once again continue down the dip into Dingledale, up into Sheen Curve as the leaders come out under the bridge, and it is James Folkard who took the lead up at Westfield, ahead now of Johnny Blackshaw. Danny Kent down into third, and Jack Blake there, and of course Sean Winfield still in fifth place, chasing along behind him. But look at this battle. James Folkard there, well, he just actually very odd. It was almost like he caught his braces in the door. He was going backwards, and past him go Johnny Blackshaw and Danny Kent on the top straight around Paddock. James, though, coming back at him on the outside of Druids. How many lead changes have we had? Just a few. And there we see Sean Winfield in fifth place. He's still got a bit of an advantage ahead of 44 George Russell, and then Reese Rothwell and Grant Whittaker. There's Steph Wardlow going through with Josh Harland, and behind them Casey Wyatt, then Ty Jones and Danny Buchan side by side. But the leaders once again through Graham Hill Bend, down the Cooper Straight into Surtees, and up the hill onto the Grand Prix Loop for the final time. And there Sean Winfield in fifth place, then George Russell and Reese Rothwell. Reese just doing absolutely everything he can to try and catch George. But the leaders, meanwhile, who wants this most? Johnny Blackshaw, it seems. He's first into Hawthorns, but Danny Kent just keeps it wound up, and he goes around the outside. James Folkard tries to follow him, but it is Danny Kent that leads as they run down through Westfield. And I think Jack Blake has just got ahead there of Johnny Blackshaw as well. There's this midfield battle. Casey Wyatt there chasing hard after Steph Wardlow, and Josh Harland in there as well, as the leaders for the final time come down through the dish left-hander of Stirlings and under the Medical Centre Bridge towards us. Checker flags being made ready, and it's the championship leaders. It's James Folkard and Danny Kent, just a few points between them in the championship. Who's going to get there first? It looks like James Folkard's got the line, But Danny Kent comes up the inside, but it's fag paper stuff. James Folkard, and he loves that. Thank you. James takes the win. Danny Kent, a brilliant second place. And Johnny Blackshaw just picks up third, much to the chagrin there of Jack Blake. He was in third as they came off the Grand Prix circuit. He nearly made it to the line, but it's still an absolutely brilliant performance by Jack. So the win goes to James Folkard from Danny Kent and Johnny Blackshaw. Fourth place to Jack Blake, ahead of Sean Winfield and George Rustling. And there on the podium, three very happy guys indeed. It's the good thing about this series this year. They are really, really good mates. They do get on. Johnny Blackshaw there third, Danny Kent second, but the winner, once again, James Folkard. And now we look forward to the next race up, round one for this weekend of the Triumph Triple Challenge, the most competitive one-make series of 2007. Well, welcome back here to Brands Hatch, and we join Tony Scott, the principal mover behind this brand new one-make series, as he entertains dealer principals and sponsors in the marquee behind the pits, and we took the opportunity of joining them to ask about their involvement with this brand new series.
I think you'd agree that the Triumph 675 is probably the most competitive motorcycle that's come out of the factory in some years. Now to see it on the racetrack, how does that affect you as a dealer?
Well, Tony, it's fantastic. First of all, it's actually getting people from other makes onto Triumph, which is fantastic, particularly the younger riders. And now with this series, the one-make series, I've always been very pleased with, because people like Noel Mackenzie came from that, and various other things from one-make series. But to be a British bike in a series, it's fantastic. And you've got riders in there from the age of 16. But I'm helping Michael Booth, as you know, and he's actually the youngest rider in the series at 16.
Out of all the bikes out there, the most unusual machine has to be the 675 and its 3-cylinder capacity. To see it out there and performing as well as it is, and being certainly as competitive as any other motorcycle out there, do you think that will have a direct effect on sales of Triumphs for the dealer network?
I don't think there's any question about it. And the sound of it, what an awesome sound. It's the best sounding motorcycle out there, and it's absolutely brilliant. You know, it's fantastic. It really is good.
From any commercial enterprise, when you put an investment into something like this, there needs to be some form of justification for it, because it is business at the end of the day. What is LPR hoping to glean from the series as a company?
I think actually, Tony, a lot of it's about, you know, we're in the logistics industry, very male-oriented industry, and there's an awful lot of closet bikers out there. And I think actually, you know, sort of as a business as well, you know, you want to appeal to your customer base as well, and this has been absolutely fantastic.
So getting closet bikers out and men in leathers is pretty much what it's all about, Jane.
That sounds about right to me.
Well, here come the leather-clad boys then. That was the action in the paddock. This is the action on the track. And there, on pole position, is number 6, Chris Bishop, coming into this series just an event ago and having a thoroughly good time. The onboard camera, as usual, carried by number 69, AJ Hutchinson. And look at that, right in the middle of the track. That was Jack Sim, the most amazing get-off right at the start. Well, I wonder if we'll be able to just pick up a shot of that again. Meanwhile, on the exit of Paddock Hill Bend, running up under the bridge into the hairpin at Druids, we're on board with AJ, the young Irish rider. Just on our left there, and just in front of our nose, is James Dye, the series leader, coming into this weekend. An uncharacteristically poor qualifying for him, and not such a good start at the moment. But AJ staying with him, like all these riders, learning the Grand Prix circuit, has very limited use during a race season, and not a lot of them have that much experience of the Grand Prix loop. AJ, well, he's seeing all these circuits for the first time this year. As they run over the top of the rise, under the bridge and up towards Hawthorns, it is Rob Guinan that leads from Steve Smith, and the entire field peeling through there. No sign of Jack Sim, he hasn't caught the pack yet. Down the Derek Minter straight they go. Rob Guinan still leading. Rob, one of the few of the leading runners not to have picked up a race win. Surely it can't be long, and back at the start. Well, let's keep an eye on Jack Sim, and bucking Bronco, get off my bike. And wonderful avoidance by the pack. What a lucky boy. There he goes, full of right hand, and he's completely off the bike. And how they miss him. Well, miss him they did. What's he going to do? get back on and ride that thing. Why don't you, boy? Well, Rob Guinan's still up the front, but his little lead has been closed down as they run once more across the start-finish line up towards Paddock Hill Bend, and Steve Smith running it down the inside into Paddock, and he takes the lead. Michael Booth tucks in behind. Fourth place is Chris Bishop, who is the leading challenge runner, but Rob Guinan loses that lead. Now, there in the chasing pack, we can see Ollie Linsdell and James Wainwright. James, the elder of the two flying Wainwright brothers, as we come down the hill from Druids, in the company of AJ Hutchinson through Graham Hill Bend and chasing. Ooh, thank you very much. Get back on board, AJ. And down Cooper Straight they run into Surtees, and there we see the TDG bike, which from this race till the end of the season will be ridden by the series leader, in this case James Dye. But up the front it's Rob Guinan having a look at Steve Smith, can't find his way through. There we can see Greville Ball. There's Ollie Linsdell chasing Greville, the second of the challenge runners behind Chris Bishop in this particular race. Chris, as a guest rider, will not be taking points though off the challenge runners in this championship race. As down the Dipper Dingle Dell we go and up into Sheen Curve. Some of you may remember this as a tight chicane, but it's been returned to its former state. A lovely sweeping right-hander down into the dished corner of Stirling's, one of the very few genuinely dished left-hand corners on any race circuit. As the leaders come back onto the straight, Steve Smith with that little advantage. Ollie Linsdell there, a little bit closer to Greville Ball, head down and charging. There the leaders go, and look at Ollie lining up Greville as they run down towards Paddock Hill Bend, and crossing a line there, our camera bike with AJ Hutchinson on board. And up at Druids it's Steve Smith in the lead. Chris Bishop challenging Rob Guinan for outright second place, and he nips through on the inside. So Bishop up to second, Rob Guinan there in third place as they run through Graham Hill Bend. On the back of that bunch in fifth place and running certainly his best race for some while is Michael Collins, number 71, as the leaders once again through Surtees. There's Michael, the younger brother of Bob Collins, and under the Johnny Herbert Bridge they go once again. Bishop getting quicker and quicker, and he's got past Rob Guinan and he's towing himself up to the leader. There Michael Booth in fourth place with Michael Collins for close company, and the varying lines as they run down that Derek Minter straight. And there at Hawthorns it's Hi-O Silver, it's Jack Sim, and he has caught the back of the pack. Well, after that could have been an absolutely appalling start. Maybe he'll get some points out of this yet, as the leaders come through Clearways once again onto Clark Curve and the Brabham Straight to complete another lap. And there we can see Greville Ball just heading that little group as the leader Steve Smith once again down into Paddock, being chased by Chris Bishop, who's broken the toe back to Rob Guinan. And up into Druids they come, and Chris would like a piece of this. There's Rob Guinan under pressure now from Michael Booth and Michael Collins, who's been caught by Ollie Linsdell. Ollie in sixth place and chasing hard as AJ tips it into the hairpin at Druids. And now we see the midfield bunch as they run up the hill into the hairpin, and there Jack Sim, well, after that horrible start, he's caught the pack, just gone past Sarah Jordan there. Sarah, a newcomer to this series, but already a race winner this year up at Cadwell Park in the Thunder Bikes. Chris Bishop, pressure on for Steve Smith in the lead. Bishop closing, and he's soon going to be right with Steve Smith. Rob Guinan in third place. Well, it's a clear third at the moment, as AJ once again, this lovely shot from the camera bike as we run through Westfield and down the wicked little dip into Dingle Dell, up the hill into Sheen Curve, and you can see completely blind the exit of this corner, over the bump in the middle of the corner there and down towards Stirling's as the leaders once more back with us. And Chris Bishop, well, he's as close as you like, but still as yet can't seem to do anything about Steve Smith. And well, Steve looks like being at this rate the leading young gun home, but can he win the race overall? Chris Bishop having a little look at Paddock Hill Bend, and Bishop, well, he gets a wonderful exit from Paddock, and Steve is going to have to give best to that. Chris Bishop it is that is up into the overall race lead. Steve Smith staying right with him, and the two of them towing themselves away up the road, away from the opposition. And into Druids, we can see Pete Middleton there, another of these series newcomers, number 3, as the leaders come down once again towards Hawthorns. This time Steve Smith, it's his turn to ride shotgun, see whether there's a chink in the armour of Chris Bishop, as Rob Guinan in 3rd place. He knows he's comfortable behind, but can he do anything about the two ahead? And there, a superb battle behind him between Michael Booth and Ollie Linsdell. Both of them race winners this year, but fighting it out over 4th and 5th at the moment. AJ once again down into the dip of Dingle Dell, and you can see this glorious wooded circuit here, but back at the front it is Steve Smith who's back in the lead. He's got ahead of Chris Bishop. Rob Guinan still there in 3rd. Chris Bishop having got the lead, he's now going to try and do it all over again, and he's got the run down into paddock, but Steve Smith keeps it. He's got the old right hand down, he keeps it poured on, but he's running wide of the exit, and thank you very much, says Chris Bishop. Through he goes, back up into the lead. But look how they're battling at paddock, has allowed Rob Guinan to close in on him. Is Rob going to pick up a chance here right towards the end of the race? Behind, Michael Booth has lost out to Ollie Linsdell. Ollie up into 4th, and there we see AJ once again under the bridge, up into the hairpin at Druids. Great stuff, and what a glorious sound these triumphs make into the sharp left-hander of Graham Hill Bend, and then the blast down Cooper Straight. Meanwhile, at the front, Chris Bishop back in front again, and Steve Smith, well, he's now got to look over his shoulder because Rob Guinan is right with him. Steve doesn't have the overall lead anymore, but he is the leading Michelin young gun. He needs to be careful. As down into Hawthorns, there's AJ with the camera bike, and right behind him is Jack Sim. Jack, fresh from the Burley Horse Trials at the start of this race, and he runs up the inside of AJ. There he goes, so he picks up another position. This is a great recovery ride by Jack, and AJ says, I'll have a bit of that, and Jack says, no you don't, but it's last lap time, and it's a checker flag. It's awaiting Chris Bishop, and he comes off clearways. He is going to see the flag first. It is a win for Chris Bishop, just from Steve Smith and Rob Guinan. Chris is pleased with that. He knows he's been in a bun fight. That was good racing from Steve Smith. Couldn't quite do it. He'll be miffed because he led so many of the laps. But the win goes to Chris Bishop. Now, as guest rider, he won't be taking any points out of this. So Bishop the win. Steve Smith then gets the 25 for finishing 2nd. Rob Guinan 3rd. Ollie Linsdell 4th. Michael Booth 5th. And James Wainwright 6th. And on the podium, very happy chappy then, the win goes to Chris Bishop from Ben Wilkins and Greville Wall. They get the trophies and the garlands and the winners' hats. This the challenge section of the race for the older riders, remember, 25 and upwards. And now we see Steve Smith into Paddock Hill Bend, and now on the podium, a great win in the Michelin Young Guns for Steve Smith from Rob Guinan and Ollie Linsdell, all having good races. And there we see Kingsley Ruddy's mum, and she's showing off Kingsley's leathers. He binned it in the Aprilia Superteam race early on, but he's okay, his leathers are all right, and his bike's just being refettled. Race 2 coming up. Welcome back once again to the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. Next action up is the 2nd race for the Aprilia RS 125 Superteams. Second in the championship is Danny Kent, and he's just come back from Spain where he was being assessed for the MotoGP Academy, and we asked him how it went.
Yeah, it went really well. I think I went really well considering I've never been on a Honda GP bike and I've never seen Albacete circuit before.
And hopefully you'll be going back out there testing, all being well?
Red Bull MotoGP Academy Dorna is a really good opportunity to go to, and if I don't get in I'll be quite disappointed, but I'm still young, still learning.
Yes, they certainly are all still young and still learning. There's Johnny Blackshaw with young Jack Blake alongside him. Great qualifying performance for this weekend from Jack. Then the two contenders at the moment for the championship, 52 Danny Kent and number 4 on pole position, James Folkard. Concentrating on the red flag at the front and the lights ahead of them. Away for race 2 they go. Everyone keeping it very sane and sensible. Slightly more sedate than the start for the earlier triumph race. But there we see Danny Kent getting up into second ahead of Johnny Blackshaw and Jack Blake as the field pour down Paddock Hill and up into Druids, and there he carries that momentum all the way through and into the lead goes Danny Kent at Druids ahead of James Folkard. And at the moment the championship on points, very close between Danny Kent and James Folkard. There they are into Surtees, and Jack Blake sticks it up the inside. Johnny Blackshaw squeezed back into 4th place momentarily, and there we see number 16 Paul Neal, son of Kev Neal. He's one of the great club riders for Bemsey as the leaders make their way out towards Hawthorns. Danny Kent just in the lead from James Folkard, and old George Cattle rustling there up the inside into Hawthorns, having a look at 4th position. So it could be all change at the front by the time they come back to us off the Grand Prix loop. But for now it's down into Dingledale and up into Sheen Curve. Around the left-hander at Stirling's and then down the short burst under this bridge at the medical centre. Danny Kent from James Folkard, Johnny Blackshaw, Jack Blake. As the pack chase them through clearways onto Clark Curve. And as they cross the start-finish line there, number 34, Stephanie Wadlow, the only girl in the series currently. As the leaders run down from Paddock Hill Bend. Still Danny Kent in the lead, but there into the bunker at the bottom of Paddock goes Sean Winfield, and it's good to see him up and okay with the marshals straight away, and the marshals already clearing that bike. That's miserable for Sean. He was looking so good this weekend. And there we see Kingsley Ruddy, series newcomer. We saw his mum polishing his overalls after his earlier off. He did the same as Sean Winfield has just done and binned it at Paddock. Meanwhile, the leaders, James Folkard nipping up the inside into Surtees. And on the back of that group, we can see George Rustling in 5th place, chasing hard. And there, Grant Whittaker. And coming like a train at him, Steph Wadlow as they run up the hill onto the long straight. But James Folkard, once again, under pressure from Danny Kent. Johnny Blackshaw's in there, Jack Blake still with them. There we see Rhys Rothwell chasing behind the leading 5. He'll have his eyes on George Rustling. He's at the back of that group ahead. And Rhys breaking away from the pack and trying desperately to get in touch with the leaders again. And there we see number 60, that's Ryan Southern. And he's enjoying himself. He's on the back of that group, but he's right in the mix, having a good race with that bat. And at the front, Johnny Blackshaw just nicks it from Danny Kent. And James Folkard, who was leading out there on the Grand Prix loop, back into 3rd place. And George Rustling now looking threatening. He's having a look at Jack Blake as they run up on the straight. Danny Kent once more challenging for the lead, tries to run it round the outside of Johnny Blackshaw, but it's not going to work this time. Johnny leads then up the hill. Danny Kent in 2nd, and James Folkard looking up the inside at the hairpin, and he's made it stick, and down goes Jack Blake. What a shame, and he is furious with himself. Unhurt, it's good to see, and Marshall's with him of course immediately, but Jack, who's been running so well all weekend after his best qualifying performance to date, but he just bins it out of that leading group. So it's now down to 4 at the front. There, George Rustling in 4th place, having got back up in touch with the leaders, and he's going for 3rd. And meanwhile, Danny Hedger, who parted company with the proceedings at Surtees earlier on, rides into retirement at Graham Hill Bend. But up the front, it is Johnny Blackshaw with James Folkard just nicking it. And look at George Rustling, he's round the outside of Danny Kent. Danny, who was leading just a lap or so ago, is now back into 4th place, and Johnny Blackshaw once more sticks it up the inside of James Folkard. And there we see Jack Blake just tipping it off at hits Druids, the front tucking under, and he slides across into the gravel. Jack's unhurt, but my goodness me, he'll be furious with himself. But it's 4 for it at the front, and Johnny Blackshaw now assumes the reins at the head of the field. James Folkard, Danny Kent back up into third, but the red flags are shown, and great to see the leading group there reacting so quickly to the red flags. They're being shown because of an incident down there on Cooper Straight to young Tommy Philp. Tommy, I'm glad to say, is okay, but the race quite rightly being called to halt. It will be a 2-part race. There will be a second start. And here we go. James Folkard then once again from pole position. Danny Kent and Johnny Blackshaw alongside him. Of course, no Jack Blake because he fell off up at Druids in the first part of the race. And the leaders once more into Paddock Hill Bend and down the steep hill from Paddock and then up the steep hill into Druids. It's Johnny Blackshaw that shows first early, but James Folkard riding right round the outside of him to take the lead on the run down to Graham Hill Bend, with Danny Kent got his nose up there in third as well. And there we see a replay of the start. Good clean start from pole position. James Folkard number 4, Johnny Blackshaw 24, Danny Kent 52. That's the 1, 2 and 3 of it. Danny Kent trying to run around the outside into Paddock, but Johnny Blackshaw just got that position, and Johnny's very quick down the long straight there up into Hawthorns and takes the lead away from James Folkard. There we see Steph Waddlow in the thick of things, being chased there by Danny Buchan as they head along the Derek Winter Straight and down into that fast right-hander at Westfields, the farthest part of the circuit away from the start-finish. And here, coming back towards that point, Johnny Blackshaw in the lead ahead of James Folkard, but only just. Danny Kent right up there in third place. And there we see, once again, Steph Waddlow as the leaders across the line. Danny Kent just up into second there. So James Folkard, championship leader, squeezed back into third place. And the crowd there enjoying some rare sunshine this summer at Paddock Hill Bend at Brands Hatch. And Johnny Blackshaw then leading from Danny Kent. George rustling there in fourth place, chasing James Folkard. And there, once again, we see number 83, Danny Buchan. And there we see Scott Wilson ahead of Tommy Dale, Ben Broadway and Ryan Southam. And back at Hawthorns, the fastest corner at Brands Hatch on the Grand Prix loop, and Johnny Blackshaw leading now from James Folkard. James getting back ahead of Danny Kent, and there we see George Cattle rustling, chasing him down towards Westfield. Behind George, that's Reece Rothwell, who's right in the mix, and there we see this little midfield group, Stephanie Waddlow, and there Ryan Southam, number 60. He'll be having a great time for his first outing on the Brands Hatch Grand Prix loop. Of course, most of these young riders, this will be the first time this weekend that they've seen the Grand Prix loop. But Johnny Blackshaw back towards us, James Folkard right with him, and Danny Kent, the three of them now just slightly breaking away from the battle behind, and they're fanning out. It could well be 3 abreast across the line, and it's, well, by a whisker, Danny Kent, and it's last lap flag being shown at the start-finish line. So they've just got something under 2.3 miles, I reckon, at this stage to go. And Danny Kent it is that chops across the bows of James Folkard. He maintains that lead, and look at Johnny Blackshaw. He's the quickest of these three, regularly lap after lap, but he's tucked down there in third place. And there we see Barnsley's own Kingsley Ruddy on board this time. He's staying on board, and he'll be enjoying himself as well out there. And Danny Kent loses the lead. Once again, James Folkard hits the front, just around half a lap, something just over half a lap to go actually in this race, and Folkard, championship leader, in the front, and he's making himself a very wide super team indeed. But once again, Johnny Blackshaw just holds his line up into Hawthorns as Danny Kent, James Folkard diving around all over the place, and Johnny Blackshaw is up into the lead. Great battle between George Russing still, with Reece Rothwell going on for 4th and 5th, as the rest of the field work their way up onto the Grand Prix loop for the last time this weekend. And there we see number 90, Luke Hinsley. Luke just ahead of Tommy Dale. and Scott Wilson. And there, Scott up through Hawthorns and head down chasing hard on the Derek Minter Straight. But meanwhile, it's fag paper stuff once again as they come down for the last time asking towards the checker flag. It is at the moment James Folkard just from Johnny Blackshaw and Danny Kent, but they fan out, and once again it's going to be 3-4. It's a chase the line, and look at Johnny Blackshaw coming at him. Johnny takes the win. James Folkard crosses in second and Danny Kent in third, but it was a two-part race, and that means the result overall goes to Johnny Blackshaw. Second was Danny Kent, James Folkard third, George Rustling fourth, Reese Rothwell fifth, and Grant Whittaker in sixth place. And there on the podium, these three young riders who've already provided such great entertainment this year, and we took the opportunity to get the reactions of the top two on the podium.
Yeah, 4 seconds. Really pleased to gain some points on James. That's all I need for the last 4 rounds of championship. Yeah.
I got 3 wins out of 4. A bit disappointed with the third, but 3 wins is good enough for me.
And another winner this weekend, Jack Blake, being presented with the Metropolitan Trophy by the organisers, Bemsey, for his brilliant performances this weekend.
Brilliant, and to get the Metropolitan Trophies, brilliant. Like, to be up with James, Danny and Johnny like all weekend, qualify third, it's unbelievable. And like, the racing's so close. It's a couple times we've had the couple of elbows and touching fairings, but then the last one I happened to crash, but I just lost the front. But it happens, and then I got presented with this. So like, I'd just like to say thanks to all my sponsors and everyone that's helped me get here, and especially me dad Mark. I wouldn't be here without him.
So James Folkard's lead at the top of the championship cut to just 8 points. Danny Kent second, Johnny Blackshaw ahead of George Rustling, Grant Whittaker and Reese Rothwell. Next up, it's the second race for the Triumph 675 Challenge. Welcome back then to Brands Hatch for the second of the Triumph 675 Challenge rounds. Rob Guinan on the front row, Jack Sim alongside him. Yes, that's what you did the first time, Jack. Don't do it this time. There we have Steve Smith, second on the grid, and coming up to take his place on pole position, Chris Bishop. All these bikes, of course, running on Michelin control tyres. We took an opportunity to go into the paddock and have a chat about their involvement to Michelin Man.
First of all, we are in England, we are in the UK. This is a British brand, Triumph. We have an excellent relationship with Triumph as a manufacturer. So I think all those things together, Triumph, Michelin, trying to learn a little bit about those local racing grassroots events, and you, T3, putting in place that series, I think it was an excellent combination for everybody.
Excellent combination and excellent racing. Here we go for the second of the Triumph Triple Challenge races, and a good start this time. Jack Sim deciding it's much safer and quicker to stay on board. And another lovely shot from AJ Hutchinson's camera bike as they just get down there into Paddock Hill Bend. And AJ there running around the outside, or trying to, of Rob Guinan. It doesn't quite work for him. Rob cuts across to the inside and runs down the hill from Druids. Just ahead of us we can see Greville Ball, and then it's Rob, and just ahead of Rob, Michael Collins. They run along Cooper Straight as the leaders into Surtees, and look who's up front. It's the man who stayed on board, Jack Sim. Superb start for Jack. He it is that leads for the first time, asking up the hill onto the Grand Prix loop here at Brands. And towards us he comes, and that's something of a lead ahead of Chris Bishop. Steve Smith's right up there as well. And there at the back of the pack after an uncharacteristically poor start, we see Josh Cagle just ahead of Sarah Jordan. Sarah, a newcomer to the series this weekend. And there, a lovely shot from AJ Hutchinson's bike as he runs up the hill from Dingledale into Sheen Curve. And another great shot. Here's AJ hard at work coming through Stirling's Bend down towards the Medical Centre Bridge. And we pick up the leaders, Jack Sim ahead of Chris Bishop. It's Steve Smith right up there in third place as they come down to cross the line. And Josh Josh Cagle trying to recover from that poorly start. Jack Sim, however, having made an absolute monkey's breakfast of the start in the earlier race, really got that one nailed, and he chases away up the hill to Druids. And there in the following group we see Ollie Linsell and James Wainwright up the inside. James Dye in there as well, Rob Guine and Michael Collins, then Greville Ball all chasing down the hill towards Graham Hill Bend. And they're back on board with AJ. Greville Ball ahead of us as we run towards Surtees. But Jack Sim still at the front, but under pressure from Chris Bishop. And there we see Rob Guinan chasing Michael Collins. That's a very steep hill up from Surtees onto the Grand Prix loop. Got to get your exit from Surtees right, and getting his exit right there, or rather the entry I should say, into Hawthorns, is Chris Bishop lining up an attempt on the lead, and their championship leader James Dye on that TDG bike. Remember, that will be ridden from now to the end of the season by whoever is the series points leader. AJ Hutchinson once again down Dingledale up into Sheen Curve, and Greville Ball ahead of him on the back of that pack that he's trying to stay in touch with down into Stirling's. Lovely idea there of that dish corner, but the leader, it's all closing up. Steve Smith in third, Michael Booth trying to stay in touch with them, but Steve Smith in third, really closing on Chris Bishop and Jack Sim in the lead. And Chris Bishop, look at that, and he's lining him up for a run down the inside into Paddock Bend, and Chris Bishop goes through into the lead. Now this is the first time Jack Sim's been headed in this race. Will he be able to get back at Chris Bishop? Steve Smith trying to run right round the outside under braking at Druids, doesn't quite make it stick, but the three of them slightly drawing away from Michael Booth in fourth place. Meanwhile ahead of them, Greville Ball in the challenge part of the race, chasing young gun Michael Collins along Cooper Straight there towards Surtees, where they'll peel off left up the hill onto the Grand Prix loop. And there we see the leaders, Chris Bishop ahead of Jack Sim, Steve Smith there through Hawthorns, still trying to get back in touch with the two ahead of him, and Michael Booth in a safe fourth. AJ Hutchinson once again coming out of Hawthorns along the Derek Minter Straight and into Westfield. Lovely shot from the rev counter there as Greville Ball chases hard after Michael Collins, and we're chasing the two of them up through Sheen Curve. We're just clipping the curb there on the exit, and some problem for Michael Collins. Don't know what that was, but Greville Ball just sails underneath him, and AJ closing as well. So I don't know whether Michael had a problem with the gears there, but Greville it is that's passed, and Michael just chopping the nose off AJ there as AJ tried to nick through on the inside as well. And along the Brabham Straight they come, and they're carrying us on board as well. Where are we going to go, AJ? Up the inside? I don't think there's quite room, and Michael's trying to come back at Greville, but that's not going to work either. The great swoop down to the bottom of Paddock, and AJ this time got a good run up the inside into Druids, and he's carrying us with him. There we go. And Michael Collins down at 2 places in about 2/3 of a lap. Here is the real battle down in midfield, and there we can see Richie Welch, one of the challenge runners, just lining up a pass there. Doesn't quite come off as he goes around the hairpin. And meanwhile, back at Hawthorns, head down, Chris Bishop in the lead, Jack Sim still running in a good second place, and Steve Smith now looking as though he's getting back in touch with the two of them. Still that tantalising gap for Michael Booth to make up. And there we see challenge runner Adam Kemp, already a race winner at Pembrey this year, just lining up a pass on Ben Wilkins. Ben, a guest rider on the press bike here this weekend, just losing out there to Kemp as they run down through Westfield. And Chris Bishop, Jack Sim, and a closing Steve Smith. Steve Smith really has got his head down, hasn't he? And a lovely exit from Clearways, but Jack Sim, having made that real mare of a start in the earlier race, determined to get as many points as possible from this one. Last lap flag being shown up the start-finish line. So it's run what you brung time now. Chris Bishop it is. That leads from Jack Sim and Steve Smith. Well, you wouldn't put your two bob on any of those particular finishing positions. They all look very aggressive and on the case. And there, Michael Collins chasing hard on the run down from Druids. But up the front, Bishop, Sim and Smith. The long drag up that hill onto the straight. And there we see Wayne Stewart giving the Michelins a bit of pressure going around Druids. Up the front, Chris Bishop then, half a lap to go. Into Hawthorns, Jack Sim, absolutely desperate to make amends for his earlier race. And Steve Smith, who's really been in the mix up the front for a good few events now. Any one of them capable of winning, as we see this lovely shot of Trevor Ball from the bike of AJ Hutchinson. And they both got past Michael Collins. Of course, Mike will be behind us now as they run up to Sheen Curve for the last time in this Triumph 675 Challenge race. And the leaders, meanwhile, on to the straight, and look who's hit the front. Jack Sim has done it. Just out there at Sheen Curve and back to Stirling's. Jack Sim leads from Chris Bishop and flying Steve Smith at the end there. And Sim crosses the line and takes the win. He'll be absolutely overjoyed. Jack Sim then, the win overall and Young Guns. Chris Bishop second, Steve Smith third, Michael Booth a good fourth ahead of James Wainwright and Ollie Linsdell. And there we see lots of smiling faces on the Young Guns podium.
I had a good race, I enjoyed it. Third, I got on the podium, so I'm happy with that, so yeah.
Second in the first race today, and unfortunately third in the last race, but yeah, we're pretty happy with this weekend.
First race was a bit interesting. I'd like to say I'd been practicing to do that for a good couple of weeks, but no, complete mistake. I must have had oil on my gloves or something and let the clutch out. So, but yeah, brilliant end to the second race.
And a challenge podium. We took the opportunity to have a word with Woody Allen's younger brother.
Well pleased with that. Catching up with Ricky, unfortunately, with his bad luck, but hopefully I'll be able to race him now and got a chance.
Well, Greville, you do have a chance, but the overall standings still led by James Dye, but now a shortening gap back to Michael Booth, Ollie Linsdell, Jack Sim, Steve Smith and James Wainwright. Well, that's it from Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, from one of the most beautiful circuits in the world to another. Next stop, Cabell Park in Lincolnshire.